Kia ora, ko Richard Templar toku ingoa, ko kai whakahaere Te Rangahau Engineering New Zealand. I'm Richard Templar, I'm the Chief Executive of Engineering New Zealand, and welcome to our election conversation series. Today I'm joined by Chlöe Swarbrick from the Green Party.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you here, Chlöe. To start up with, we'd like your elevator pitch, 1 minute on what the Greens are going to do for the engineering profession, and then we'll ask you some questions.
And go. Look, I think that our potential, our productivity, our opportunities as a country really relies on our ability to plan and invest. And the Green Party have long prided ourselves in our work across the parliamentary aisle to get long-term enduring consensus on the big issues that matter. It's why we've worked with this government on the likes of the infrastructural pipeline, but also on the likes of the Zero Carbon Act with James as the first Green Minister of Climate Change. People can see what our values are, and we've also put out there a fiscal strategy that shows the importance of investing in ourselves and our jobs and having that pipeline, which hopefully we can get cross-party consensus on. So I think we've also demonstrated that we're always willing to do the work on things that are practical and common sense.
Fantastic. You've mentioned the infrastructure pipeline and the work of the Infrastructure Commission. In terms of the Infrastructure Commission's report, what do you think was the most important recommendation?
Oh, mate, they've all got to work. And those four kind of component parts or buckets of the 17 odd recommendations really give us a framework for overhauling the way that we do infrastructure in this country. But the reality is that we have to grapple with the $200 billion odd infrastructural deficit that we have at the moment. I think there were some really salient points about the fact that we also don't tend to manage the things that we already have and look after our assets. Definitely see that now creeping up in terms of the historical rates increases with local government all across the country. So I think it's probably, if I am to have to prioritise a few of those things, it's planning appropriately, which also means obviously grappling with climate mitigation adaptation, which I think all good infrastructure to do both of those things at the same time. And then managing the things that we already have well. And I think that if we were having the conversation from that perspective around the likes of the harbour crossing, would be coming to quite different conclusions than we are at the moment, because it seems at present the focus is very much on politicians grabbing headlines. And look, I get it, but if you were to design a system that was capable, let alone competent, with dealing with the issues of our time, you probably wouldn't design the Westminster parliamentary system, but we'll save the constitutional conversation for another day.
Yes, probably best to do that. You've mentioned adaptation and mitigation. One of the things we're seeing in New Zealand is an increased frequency of natural hazard events and obviously climate events. Mm-hmm. What do you think the solution is in that space?
Well, we're obviously a small country at the bottom of the South Pacific, but that also means that we rely on the international rules-based order. So I think the first and one of the most important things is actually that we do uphold our commitments, because if we are going to point the finger at other countries and require them to do the same, then we need to have our own backyard in order. So that's why I've been raising the alarm and concern about this government's wishy-washy commitment, not commitment to our nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. But that's all kind of obviously on the mitigation side. As I alluded to in the previous answer, I think that good mitigation is also good adaptation. That means that, case in point, renewable distributed energy generation is a really key potential door opener for us as a country, also for lowering household bills. And this is where I think that good green practical common sense policy lowers household bills, lowers climate changing emissions, but also improves all of our quality of life. So in the bigger framework domestically, I've been trying, I won't say in vain, but it has been a little bit frustrating, if I can be honest, to try and move the cross-partisan work on the National Adaptation Framework and the Climate Adaptation Bill far faster than it has been at the moment. And it's also where we need to grapple with those really big issues, the likes of who pays, for example, which unfortunately this government in a cabinet paper in October of last year, 2025, decided to kick the can down the road on. And sure, they'll raise the issue of the flood maps, and that's great, but their own official advice says that without grappling with those issues of managed retreat or who pays, let alone supporting local government for all of the unfunded mandates that they're getting, we're not actually really meaningfully dealing with these issues, but once again, siloing them.
You talked about the importance of renewable energy and how we deal with that. I guess one of the things I'm keen to know is one of the challenges with renewable energy is what we do on, on still dull days where we aren't getting solar and wind. Mm-hmm. How do you see New Zealand filling the gaps, as it were?
Yeah, so this is why I think a distributed, diffused renewable energy network, which obviously takes into account all of the different sources of renewable energy, is critical, including geothermal. And I can't pre-announce our election policy, but I think there'll be a lot to see in there, everything from fixing the market side of things to that distributed, diverse renewable energy input, everything from obviously households all the way to looking at state assets, and then also, I'm not going to give anything away at the moment, but it's very, very exciting. I think perhaps one of the big pieces which I can talk about, which we've been trying, again, unfortunately, without all too much traction with this government, and do need to give a shout out to our energy spokesperson, Scott, on this work, is to have some cross-partisan agreement on an energy strategy, because in lieu of that, we end up having these utterly bonkers, piecemeal, ad hoc debates around the likes of an LNG import facility, as opposed to where we're going and how we're going to get there. Because actually, I agreed with the Prime Minister when the fossil fuel crisis first hit, and he said, hope is not a plan.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's a real need for a strategy. One of the big users of energy in New Zealand is our manufacturing sector. How do we get more productivity? How do we get our manufacturing sector to grow? Yeah,
so you'll see, obviously, we have a long, proud whakapapa or history on this stuff as the Greens, obviously with our government investment in decarbonisation and Decarbonising Industry Fund, which, again, unfortunately, culled by this government. But you can see that the direction of travel there is to understand that thriving business works in partnership with a government that can plan for good infrastructure. I think that you'll also see some of that thinking in the likes of our transport policy, for example, where I think good transport policy is all about how do we actually get people and goods and services as efficiently as possible around this country, let alone all of those co-benefits in terms of reducing climate changing emissions and otherwise. And if we were to be having conversations from that perspective and those criteria, we'd be building a heck of a lot more rail and I think far less roads of National Party significance. But this is where, I guess, to the core of your question. This is also why the Green Party put out last year our industrial strategy, because we as a country have not had any form of meaningful industrial planning for the last 40 or so years, which means that we are missing the connections between the education pipeline, the jobs that we are creating, and the investments that we are making. And I've long been perplexed by how, for my entire lifetime, government has been perceived as or siloed out as a sector of society, as opposed to the democratic facilitation of how we use our collective resources. And that's what you can see kind of underpinning our economic thinking.
So in terms of the industrial strategy, what do you think is the key to actually triggering growth? We released our Green Party tax policy over the weekend. When is this going out, by the way? I don't know if I'm giving anything away with the chronology of events. But anyway, the Green Party tax policy, which we put out, that spoke to obviously 96%, income tax cuts for 96% of New Zealanders. But I think the really critical component of that can be lost in the sound bites is that it's not just about rebalancing the tax system. It is fundamentally about actually unlocking the resources necessary to invest in reducing everybody's cost of living and increasing our productivity potential as a country. So case in point, people will recall that over the last 2.5 or so years subsequent to this government coming in and giving people a tax cut, $20 extra in their back pocket, next to nobody really feels like their lives are $20 better off per week because the cost of living has escalated and swallowed that buck up in terms of the likes of corporate profits for particularly our supermarkets, let alone the oil companies. And
that's where the investment that we'll be making, which people will see rolled out in the rest of our election policies, will be very much in decommodifying those basic essential needs that everybody has, which in turn means that we can reduce the cost of living for New Zealanders, but also make those requisite investments in keeping manufacturing here. That is why we have been such avid supporters in the likes of Tokoroa when the pulp and paper mill was closing, just to show that there are different ways of doing these things. We have incredible assets. Same goes in the Hawke's Bay with the closure of McCain's Waddies factory. Like, it is insane not only from the job loss perspective, but also from climate changing emissions added to all of these products that we then have to bring back into our country, to not have the government stepping up and stepping into that gap. And again, properly meaningfully planning for the type of economy that we want, which is how we then end up with the crowding in of private investment.
Chlöe Swarbrick, thank you very much for the conversation. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, do be on the lookout for our great infrastructure debate, which will be happening on the 6th of August. I look forward to seeing you there. Once again, Chlöe Swarbrick from the Greens, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.